Hello, Mr. Edmonds.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Darren Gruner.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. How are you?
Very good on this chilly morning.
This chilly morning
in Memphis, Tennessee.
Oh, you're in Tennessee. Oh, you're getting there. It's beautiful out here today in sunny Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
All right, guys, we are live. This is Adam Linneman, the Green Executive. We have.
Hey, can you hang on just 1 second, Adam? I'm so
Sure.
sorry. A lot of your listeners know that you're going to be doing this on Facebook and Zoom and all this great stuff, but we want to make sure that we get you on Turfs Up Radio as well. So let's make sure we're all set up for this. Hang on 1 second.
Sure.
I think we're good. Okay, you can actually. You know what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this off. I'm going to get this. We're ready to go anytime you are.
All right.
Thank you so much.
So good morning, everyone. Adam Linneman, the Green Executive, and we are live today on the Green Executive Facebook page, Turfs Up Radio Facebook page, and live on Turfs Up Radio. Want to remind all of our listeners to download the Turfs Up Radio app and tune in to all of our specials. But today, our focus is on an interview with Ron Edmonds with the Prince of PM Group. Ron, am I pronouncing the name of your business correctly?
Close enough.
Close enough. All right, Ron. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to be talking about your specialty, which is understanding the value of your lawn and landscaping business, and you specialize in green industry mergers and acquisitions. Tell us a little bit about that and about yourself and your history.
Well, our firm is, as Adam mentioned, focused specifically on mergers and acquisitions related to lawn and landscape related businesses. We don't do anything else. We'll get involved with snow removal and other facility things, but no what they call Main Street work. We got involved with that about 15 years ago. By background, I practiced as a CPA for 14 years, and then I was a CFO of a company for 8 years, and we sold it, and I was trying to figure out what to do. And I got involved with consulting for the world's largest lawn care company. I'm based in Memphis, Tennessee, and that is the hometown of True Green Lawn Care. And I did some work for them for a couple of years as a consultant, and really got interested in the industry, got to know people in the lawn and landscape business and business brokers that worked in that area, and carved out my place. And we've been doing that ever since. We started out primarily focused on lawn care. And when I use that word lawn care, I'm really talking about the fertilization and weed control businesses. But it quickly spread over to landscape maintenance businesses. And most of the time, the hottest part of that industry for me has been commercial landscape maintenance businesses, but we do some of a wide range of things. We still do a lot of residential lawn care business as well, and that's sort of a booming area today. We have an affiliate in California who works with us, and then we have a couple of people with us here in the Memphis office, but I'm sort of the face of it. And we found that to be fun because there are only a handful of people that do what we do. And so I went from the corporate world of being a very little fish in a big pond to a big fish in a little pond. And I found I liked that, as I think probably many of your listeners like being a business owner and the freedom to pursue your dreams that they get. We work with business owners. I'd be honest, the majority of our relationships with business owners come late in the game when they are examining whether it's time to sell their business. It frankly works out a lot better, and the very best transactions I've ever been involved with have been people who sought me out years before they went to that stage. And, the most successful group I ever worked with were two guys that started lawn mowing businesses when they were in high school, separate businesses. They went to the same junior college and met each other. They put their businesses together at some point, and they developed a plan. And I met them. They were probably 35 when I met them. They sold their business when they were about to turn 40. And I can't tell you how much money they got for it, but it was a number that most people would be shocked by how big it was. And it was because they had a plan from day one, and they executed that step by step over a 20-year period.
When you find it, I'm sorry, I this is fascinating to me because this is not the first time that I've heard that, and I start to think about it, and I'd love for our listeners to understand that if you're in business, when you're building a business, you're building value, right? And if you know that you can build something that's going to be worth something, you want to know that it's worth something down the line, right? So to work with someone like you to make sure that you keep, because you have that experience where you can help build that so that there's that value at the end to sell it. That's interesting. I mean, that's just good. That's a smart thing. I mean, people, there's a lot of guys out there don't have a business as simple as a business plan. And a lot of people, when you go to get a loan, I've done this, I've been in business for a long time. When you go to get a loan, they want to know they want to see your business plan. They want to know, and a lot of people don't understand that that's important to have. You should. It just makes sense. But what's messed up about our industry is that we are it's so easy to get into. You don't have to have a business mind to get into this, but you should, because it's still a business. We talk about that all the time. So it's interesting. I'd love to talk to you, by the way.
Darren, you should have hired Ron back years ago when you sold your business.
I should have, because I wouldn't have made the mistakes that I did, first of all. But I'd love to talk to you anyway, even with Turfs Up Radio. It'd be interesting to find out what your thoughts would be, because, hey, I push these guys. People are listening. This is a good person to talk to, because this is a good time. You want to think about you never know what's going to happen 5 years from now. Listen, 10 years ago, did you ever think that you're where you'd be where you are today? First of all, right? So it's good about planning, right?
After telling that story of a great success, I have to share the other side of that story. Well, and the tragedy for business owners in this industry and others is that there's some basic facts I can share. Number one is that the vast majority of business owners have virtually all of their wealth tied up in their business, first of all, and may have no other assets other than a checking account with a few $100s in it. And they're depending on that business to sustain them when it's time to retire or move on. And the vast majority of them have no idea what their business is worth. And if they even have an idea, it is usually very wrong and based on stories they've heard about other people selling their business, and they try to apply the same concept they think was the basis for somebody else selling their business without understanding underlying facts. And often they get a big and very often negative surprise by not being focused that way.
Tell us about, so back to the group of guys that went out of college and had this plan. So this was actually their motive, or their plan this whole time, was to start this from day one and have something to be able to sell. Tell us a little bit about some steps that you would recommend a lawn or landscape professional owner to take to make sure their business is starting to build value, and how they can ultimately build great wealth with that if they continue to do things right.
Well, the first thing is to understand where value comes from. And there's things you can read about that. We have a little program that's accessible through our website called Value Builder, the purpose of which is to really assess where your business is at any point in time on what they call the 8 key drivers of value. Some of which are very obvious, which is that you're making money, that you're growing. Some of them are less clear to people. One of the key ones that is important to understand is that if your business revolves around you as the business owner, and you make all the decisions, you call all the shots, you do all the marketing, then you may be making a ton of money, but you haven't built a business. You have a profession. And
I like that.
That's a really big problem for a lot of people. Now, it's a much worse problem for people who come from a design background, because even though a person may have other skills, they're focused on how they get their customers because they're the greatest landscape designer in Fort Collins, Colorado, or wherever.
Or Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
That doesn't work very well it doesn't mean you can't sell that business, but people are going to be very wary of what happens to Joe's landscape business when Joe isn't there anymore. And so focusing on the sustainability is probably a good word to use, trendy, I suppose, of the business is one of the key things. So you want to build something that generates profits, cash flow into the future, independent of you. And one of the things I've occasionally run into over the last few years is a true absentee owner. And it seems hard to imagine, but I talked to a guy last week who had lived for 2 years in a distant foreign resort community, and has a thriving large business in an American city. That's not an easy concept to pull off. It's also not an easy thing to execute, because you started your business typically because it's something you like to do, that you see can make you the money in the life and get you the lifestyle you want. And pulling back from some of the things that you really like to do is not an easy thing. I see that myself. I have the hardest time getting someone else to handle things like marketing things, websites and stuff, because I like that stuff. But it's not the best use of my time to be doing that. And business owners are well advised to think about what the best use of their time is. It's a little trite now, but it came from Michael Gerber originally, is the concept that you should be, as a business owner, your job is to work on the business, not in the business.
Can I say something? I was just going to say that we talk about that all the time. I love the way you're going. And to go back to these two guys that got started, they set themselves up that way from the beginning. And a lot of guys go through that whole thing. They start their business the wrong way because they want to work in the business. And then they realize, I'm stuck in this bubble. I can't get out. So it's time to start working on it. But if you set yourself up from the beginning like that, it's a great concept. But how do we get out of that at this point, right? At this point, when we're in it, like you said, like I'm a designer, I have my own design firm. I have an idea of that's why I want to talk to you about it later on after the show. But I have a design firm that I'm the designer. How do I get out of this? How do I turn that from working in the business to working on it and then making it a value without me there?
That's of course a common question, and I don't have the perfect answer for it. But I will tell you, one of the things that we have been focusing on the last few years as we talk with business owners that are in that situation, because frankly, in a large percentage of the design firm type situations, the best buyer for the business is somebody that works there. And because there's a lot of reasons for that. Part of it is it's a seamless transition, hopefully, and it's also they understand the risks associated with a business the way that an outsider doesn't really understand. And so that's really affects value, which we'll come back to. That's a good segue back to value in just a moment. But one of the things we suggest that people do if they have the gift of time, unfortunately, a lot of people that come to see me do not have the gift of time. But if you have the time to do some things differently, if you don't have a viable successor within your company, we suggest that you find one and bring them in as a number two person. Of course, people, that's easier said than done, but we have a few ideas about how you might approach that. And recognizing that the opportunity to gain ownership is there, you're likely to have more people interested in the opportunity. So I call that hire your buyer. But we definitely recommend that as an option for people in those kinds of businesses.
I try to get my son to take over my business, but he wants nothing to do with the landscape. He's doing finance. He's doing something else. So, I mean, we all think about that. So maybe one of our children could take over, but sometimes it just doesn't happen.
That's one of the tragedies we see fairly often. Tragedy may be a strong word most times, but many people assume that their children will take over the business. And even if they're working in the business, they may recognize at some point that child doesn't have the skills or what I hear more often than skills is motivation to be a business owner. And so it's that's a S blank blank T moment for people. And that comes along. Also, of course, if you have a child in the business who has a spouse that has a job and they get transferred, there's lots of things that happen that can derail that plan that you thought you had for what you were going to do.
Ron, let's transition to value. Let's talk a little bit about what people can do to build value in their lawn and landscaping businesses. I know, as a landscape consultant, so I'm very fortunate, very blessed that my business has succeeded. I can leave on a 2-week vacation, 3-week vacation, and things run pretty darn smoothly without me being there. And I think a lot of people that I work with are not at that point yet, and they're wanting to be at that point. And so a lot of things we do is teach them to have systems and procedures in place to where things happen on their own by other management staff inside the company. Let's talk a little bit more about how you can build value and maybe some things that you see that small business owners can do to make that happen.
For sure. You are correct that you're demonstrating that your business can operate without you by taking that 2 or 3 week vacation. And that speaks very loudly. I wanted to take a quick step back and talk about what value is and where it comes from.
Let's do it.
And the traditional definition of value is that the fair market value of a business is the amount that a willing buyer would pay a willing seller for the business with reasonable knowledge of the facts and circumstances, and with neither one of them being under a compulsion to buy or sell.
Wait, you mean, hold that thought. You mean it's not 3 times the value of how much business you do every week? I mean, think about that. We come up with square foot price. We come up with all of a sudden it's just a value. I've heard that so many times. That's interesting.
I mean, that's a huge issue, that disconnect. As I mentioned, I work a lot in the fertilization, weed control, lawn care business. And that's a rampant belief that your business is worth some multiple of revenue, say 1 times revenue. And that was was created when companies like True Green and Scott's would give people offers that were denominated that way. That's what they would tell them the offer was. They didn't tell them that they'd crunched all these numbers to figure out how they'd make money off of it before they gave that to them. And the reality is that it matters a lot, for example, in a lawn care business, what your pricing is. And if it's a certain level, it might get 1 time's revenue. But if it's lower, it will go down faster than the price will go down faster than your prices are lower than the other companies. And so, frankly, nobody that's a buyer really calculates value based upon revenue. They might have an idea based upon what they think that business might have, but they would need to understand what the business's margins look like before they could, and what kind of cash flow is being generated from the business before they could make a rational offer for the business. And cash flow is really what value is all about with a business. And I like to think of it as a simple formula. It's not that simple, but I describe it simply as saying that value is a function of 2 things: future cash flows and risk. And so people ask me, when applying the rules of thumb that Darren was just using as an example, they ask me, what year is most important to a buyer? Is it last year? Is it some sort of 3-year average? And while some people might do a 3-year average, that's just a negotiating strategy more than anything else. The year that's most important to a buyer in evaluating your business is next year and the year after that, because that's what they're going to get. And so they're going to be very interested in what's going to happen in the future. So that goes back to the question of what happens to the business when you, the owner, aren't there anymore. It's also the reason why businesses that have recurring revenue, such as maintenance contracts or fertilization and weed control contracts, are frankly exponentially more valuable than businesses that rely on projects that have to be sold year after year. And so that's a major factor. So you can project what the revenue will be next year. The risk, if you have contracts for customers, the risk isn't zero that revenue won't be there, but it's a lot lower than it is for projects that have to be sold. And then similarly, there's lots of risks that are out there that would affect what future cash flows might actually come to place. There could be issues about employees. Do you have a stable workforce with appropriate agreements in place with your key employees or not?
Have a reputation.
Does the buyer have to worry about whether your general manager is going to go down the street and open a new business that competes, and that sort of thing? And there are a myriad of risks out there. Systems and good employees and good customer arrangements, go a long way to mitigating that risk. Sometimes a high quality brand has a big impact on mitigating risk. You can't convert a construction focused business into a maintenance business just with words, but it is true that a business that is focused on construction projects, if it's not totally the owner selling and it has a system to generate leads and close leads, is going to be more sellable than a business that doesn't have those things. And so those factors are all risk mitigators for the future. And so value is really a function of future cash flows and the risk that those cash flows will or won't be available to a buyer. So
it's easier to sell. What I'm hearing is it's easier to sell a business that has contracts, that has serviceable contracts, because obviously they know that they're going to be making money in the long run, as opposed to being like a company like ours. We're like Totalscape Design. We just do design work. We do new contracts every year. It's not very repetitive. Usually the business that we do, it's done and over with. We don't go. There's no going back. It's a lot easier.
That's exactly right. Although I would challenge you to carefully consider, where do your customers come from? And what about that is a transferable thing? And what could you do to make it more transferable?
Well, that's what I was thinking. That's why I asked you. I threw out the reputation word. That's big for a company like ours, and we need to make sure that reputation's in place, because we know that most of our clients are coming from searches, Google search and stuff like that, and then people are most likely to find somebody that has a better reputation than someone that doesn't have a reputation at all, right?
And actually, reputation is one of those drivers of value those 8 drivers of value that comes through the Value Builder score thing. You ought to run through the Value Builder score. You can go to our website and do it. It doesn't cost anything. You get a pretty extensive report. It's not specific to landscape, although we do have some material that kind of maps those things to that.
What's the website real quick so we can?
It's principiumgroup.com. PRINCIPIUM group.com. Okay. My comment on branding is that's a horrible name. And it's almost a definition of a horrible name, because it's hard to pronounce and hard to spell. And to be honest, one person convinced me I should never change it, because we'd invested so much in name recognition in the industry. And it's Mike Bogan, the CEO of Landcare, who's a great friend of mine. I was telling him I came up with these 5 or 6 other names. This has been 5 years ago, probably now. 5 or 6 different names I was thinking of, because I just had to get rid of that name. And he said, you'd be an idiot to change the name now. And so, but I do tell people, if they have the gift of time, to think about that.
Listen, people are going to hack names no matter what. People when I say Turfs Up Radio, they spell it wrong. They don't understand what it is. It doesn't matter. So I figured, you know what? Just keep it. Stop. Get it.
Ron, so just to kind of dumb this back a little bit, okay? You're telling me that landscape contractors need to be invoicing their customers quickly? Surprise, right? Yes, they should be. It gets my wife and I all the time that we work with a pretty good company that services our air conditioner and heating system, and it's sometimes a month till we get an invoice from them. I mean, that just blows my mind.
Let me comment further on that in the context of value. Among maintenance companies, some people bill at the beginning of the month for their contracted amount, and some people bill at the end of the month. And guess what? The receivables you generate by waiting till the end of the month to bill comes straight off the top of the value of your business, because if somebody buys your business and is determining what they're willing to offer, they're going to factor in what working capital has to be added to the business. And if you constructed your business to minimize that working capital, literally, if you're tying up $200,000 in billings by doing it that way, your business is worth $200,000 less, maybe more.
That's crazy.
and we see everything from people that don't get them out until 15 days after the end of the month, to occasionally, years ago, I worked on a project with a guy that was buying a residential. I mean, frankly, it was some version of Mow, Blow, and Go, but it was a pretty big operation. It actually was where I really got interested in that angle, which is a better business than some people might think in some markets, because it's consumer advertising driven, similar to fertilization and weed control. But this business, they had every one of their customers, and this was probably a $3 or $4 million business at the time. in a major metro area, every customer was on credit card or automatic bank draft that was processed on the first day of the month. So they had the lowest possible working capital you could ever have. And if you could pull that off, it would, literally create value. Nice. And so that's one angle. There are many others. And, we don't really do consulting on that sort of thing, but we like to aim people to people like Adam who do that, who can really, over a period of time, you can really build value with some basic system steps.
Sure. Things, simple things such as having a good quality website that's generated leads consistently, I'm sure brings value to a business. Having a good social media following in general for your business probably brings some value. Is that correct, Ron?
It does. And the website thing, you would be astonished at the things. Well, you may see some of these as a consultant, but probably the people with these issues are the least likely to seek out consulting. But over time, I've seen several companies that didn't have a website and didn't have it because they believed that their reputation was sufficient to bring in the level of business they wanted to have. And or they had some other reasons, like they'd seen a lot of websites that hadn't been properly updated. And they were afraid that would happen to them. And you literally want to grab someone and shake them when they say that, because first of all, so these people are typically running commercial maintenance businesses, and they do have a good clientele, but they have no concept of how bid lists get prepared, because it's not the senior property managers that are preparing the bid list. It's a 22-year-old kid, and they don't know anybody, and all they do is sit down at the internet and look at the BAMA membership list and do a search for websites. And you don't know how many opportunities you didn't get. Some of those same companies occasionally will do things like have unmarked trucks. You had a guy tell me that he kept his trucks unmarked, except because one of his employees got in a wreck one time, and he got sued for $1 million because it was a commercial truck and he didn't want to attract attention. And I said, "I'm sorry, sir, but it's not going to take him very long to figure out it's a commercial truck, and you're going to get sued anyway. And you do have insurance, right? What are you talking about?" They literally had magnetic signs that they popped on their trucks when they went on properties that required vendor trucks to be marked. And again, they have no idea how much business they didn't get. That may not matter to them. They may be maxed out for what they want to do, but that's the last thing a buyer is going to be wanting to do, is have it maxed out. So some of those things, clearly build value.
How about, having policy manuals in place within your organization, marketing plans in place? All that would bring definitely some value, I would think, too, especially if you've had it consistently working for you to help generate sales and to keep your business in order, I guess, in line.
To how you describe, there is no doubt that is true. It's a little hard to calculate that.
Sure.
But it certainly makes a business more sellable for a buyer to know that those things are in place and that they don't have to figure them out from ground zero. And so it really does affect value directly, but I can't say that putting a policy manual together will increase the value of your business 5% or something like that.
Sure.
But I'll tell you another important thing for business owners, again, who have the gift of time to realize, is that with only a very few exceptions, the recommendations for building the value in the business in anticipation of the sale, guess what? They build a better, stronger, more profitable business now, whether you end up selling it or not. And so there's no downside to taking these constructive actions. Good
advice. Appreciate that.
Well, I'm rebuilding Totalscape Design, by the way. and I'm going to hire you to help me. And I have a little contest, inside contest with Adam anyway, even though we're in different parts of the country, but we've both taken on something similar, a similar task. And we're going to do some head-to-head competition, friendly head-to-head competition. And I am going to make one extra step that he didn't plan on.
Oh.
He introduced me to you. I'm going to hire you to help me. You're going to be my ace in a hole. Okay.
Yeah, I do want to give one piece of advice to owners that are struggling with the fact that they're have a construction-oriented business, and they're hearing that maintenance businesses are worth more, because it's not uncommon for that to really upset people. Some of them get higher margins, for example, way higher margins in some cases than maintenance companies. But then they say, well, I'm just going to turn this into a maintenance business. And I highly recommend that people hesitate before they make a decision like that. And, one of the reasons that I think the landscape industry is so positively viewed today from the financial community is that by and large, the industry performed, everybody struggled, but performed way better during the Great Recession than people would have expected. Except guess who? The people who just said, oh, we're a construction company and we've got to change into a maintenance company. The biggest flame out in the industry in your state, Florida, was that company that tried to reinvent itself overnight on a ridiculously large scale, but it tried to reinvent itself as a maintenance company.
Well, can I say something to that regard? And I don't want to say that you're wrong, because overall you're most likely right. You're much smarter than I am. It is what it is. Okay, I get it. All right. I just want to tell you what I did. I had a very successful construction company, landscape. We did landscape and maintenance. I didn't do any lawn maintenance, like cutting lawns and stuff like that. I was mainly doing projects, pool projects, building outdoor kitchens, stuff like that, millions of square foot of pavers, stuff like that. When the recession hit, I got stuck with, the overhead would blow your mind. I don't even want to tell anybody, scared the crap out of me, really. And then, but what happened was I said, I got to do something, and I can't quit because no one's paying my bills. I got to do something. So I created Kentucky Blue Lawn Consultants, and I decided to start working instead of trying to just, maybe this was the difference. Instead of trying to go out and fertilize lawns on a one-by-one basis, like Lawn Doctor, or True Green. I really don't know the model. This is what I know, and that might not be true, but on a one-to-one basis on residential, I went to all of my landscaper friends. I said, listen, let's work together. Mm-hmm. You guys can do your construction and you can do your lawn maintenance, and I'll fertilize your lawns for you. And like if you had 200-300 lawns, I'll take care of that end for you. So I built that business. I started working for other companies to do theirs. So that worked for me as a maintenance guy. But you're right. I don't think that if I went out one by one, knocked on doors and said, I like to fertilize your lawn, I don't think that it would have been successful.
Yeah. I'm not saying that people shouldn't be creative and react to the environment they find themselves in. I'm just saying that just because you're a good landscape designer does not make you good at running a company that cuts grass. And you're not giving credit to the people that have the maintenance side, that they have done something that has allowed them to grow and create their businesses. I tell you, I'm fascinated by the subject of how people reacted to the recession and the success stories and the failures, but the success stories amaze me. And I have one I would encourage people to read. And I have never, this is not a client of mine, but it's been well publicized and you see it in the trade magazines. But Gary Horton has a company called Landscape Development, Inc. in California. And going into the recession, it was $100 million plus company. And he wrote it down to under $10 million in annual revenue. Now it's way back up now, and he has reinvented it largely as a maintenance company. They still do a lot of construction, but they've been doing serial acquisitions, building maintenance over a wide area, done it really in a logical, systematic way. But I cannot, in my wildest dreams, imagine how you could go from 100 million to like 7.5 million and not go broke. You'd be beating a pathway to the bank every day, and you must have really good BS, because I just don't think it could be done. But he did it, and I'm really amazed and have a lot of respect for that.
Well, you listen. Look at the alternative. I mean, you got to do something, right? Or if not, you're dead in the water altogether. So you have to do something. Wind it back down and try to. We weren't expecting that. We just talked about this on the Weekend in Review with Turfs Up Radio. We talked with Wayne Bowles. We talked about we didn't. You know, my God, you know, we were doing a little prelude to the show here to interview with you, talking about how we need an exit strategy. A lot of us don't have that exit, that idea that there's something could happen in your business. It's time, and you know, you need to have. You don't want to say it, but you almost kind of want to have one foot out the door just in case.
Yeah, and we really need to talk about that while we have a few minutes,
please,
because people do need to have an exit strategy for lots of reasons. You know, first of all, as we've talked about, you're going to have a lot better success when it comes time to exit if you have thought it through and you understand something about where the value is in your business and how you might possibly be able to extricate that value and a realistic idea of what it is. But equally important is you don't know when your time to exit is going to be. And there's a million reasons. While I will say that the majority of my clients arrive between 55 and 65, that's maybe 75%. The other 25% have some reason that they need to exit their business. Maybe they're having financial challenges, or oftentimes it's an illness from themselves or a spouse or a child, or in today's world, it may be that a spouse has been transferred and they need to relocate and do something with the business they've built. There's a lot of reasons. And if you haven't given it any thought, it's really hard. In addition, in the middle of all that, you know, an exit strategy usually involves identifying what time out in the future you would like to exit, and then a pathway to get to the point you want to be. It also needs to protect the business in the meantime and protect your family in the event something happens to you. And, you know, people that are landscapers are not as specialized as I am. I will tell you that petrifies me, and it petrifies my wife a lot more than me. What are you going to do with all this stuff if you get in a car wreck? You know, I actually do have a plan. I have the proverbial 3 envelopes, you know, and one of them is I've got a deal worked with somebody who will help deal with the clients I have if something should happen to me unexpectedly. I haven't gone over that with my wife in detail, but that's in that other envelope. And I'm a big believer in people doing that. You know, one of the things that comes up, you know, I came out of the public accounting world. And when you work for a big public accounting firm, they don't let you go to accounting meetings. You know, that's considered stupid. You know, you're there. I know now that one of the main reasons they didn't want you to go to those meetings is they're afraid someone would hire you. But they told us it was a waste of time. You should be at events where you have potential clients. And I think that's a mindset that a significant portion of the people in the landscape industry have too. And I will suggest that you're better off in many ways knowing your competitors and being friendly competitors. For one, as I tell my boys, or told them when they were teenagers, I said, you are going to have enemies the rest of your life, most of which you're going to have no idea where they came from or what you did to make someone mad at you. Right. Don't make any extra ones. Yeah, and right. I feel the same way about business owners. And there's so much to be gained by participating in trade groups, especially if you can do that in non-competitive situations. But really knowing your competitors, who else could help you out of a jam if you get in one, but a local competitor.
Can I interject? I want to tell you something. I told you about my lawn, the business that I built after the recession in 07, 08, whatever. I can't remember which year it was. It was awful. It's just a bad stain on my brain. But when I built the Kentucky Blue Lawn Consultants, I was working for other landscapers. When I got out and moved to Florida and I was building Turfs Up Radio, I sold it to one of the guys that I was buying because he loved the business concept that I built. So it's exactly what you're saying. You build, you work with these guys. The people that you're working with is a good opportunity for you to get. That was my exit strategy with that business.
The flip side of that, again, the bad story from people that didn't do that is you frequently have people that know none of their competitors, and they may even market talking trash on their competitors. They might have a website. I mean, in the lawn care space, it might say, we offer a 5-step program. Why do those people sell an 8-step program that doesn't do any better than we do? Not only is our price per application lower, they're stealing your money. Those people are not going to buy your business.
I hate that. Yeah, you don't. I wouldn't build a business off of
build your business on what you do well, not attacking other people. Yeah. Because you never know, when one of those other people is your answer. So those are really important things. The traditional time to start planning your exit is when you start or buy a business. Not very many people really do that, but I sometimes have the opportunity to talk with people about that. And it's pretty powerful. So, I've got a deal that's about to close right now. It's got an energetic young guy buying the company, and he knows that he's not from inside the industry, and he's studying, LMN versus Aspire versus all, and what kind of software he's going to install and everything. And I think he's thinking about that in the right way. But I'm also encouraging him to think not just about next month and next year, but putting it together in a way that maximizes the value when he's ready to sell.
Is your background in accounting? Is that
yes.
You're a CPA, right?
I'm a retired CPA now, but yes.
Well, that's fantastic. So I have a buddy of mine in New Jersey. He had a company called Lawn Connection. And I remember he was successful. He and his brother, they're still in business, and they're very successful actually. And he was talking to me years ago about hiring his CPA to help him. And they offered him a partnership, a small partnership. And I'm like, you're successful. What do you need that for? and guess what? He proved me that he needed that. He needed a guy like you. So essentially you become a partner for these companies. You start out, it's good to have someone who knows what they're doing. I tell people all the time, hire me because I'm your designer to let me project manage the entire project, your entire, so you don't have to go through all the little things that, and all the things that I've learned in the past 30, 40 years, so you don't have to go through all that during your one project. Hire me, I'll help you through the whole thing. Same thing should be with you. Just like I told people, go to Adam when they want to be, they want to be helped in their business, talk to someone. Something like you would be perfect for when I'm ready to buy a business. I love that concept. How do we convince people to do that, though?
Yeah. One of the things we see is that when you're actually selling a business, the relationship with somebody like me is pretty intimate, if you will. You have to bare your soul. You have to talk sometimes every day for an extended period of time. You better find somebody you can get along with. Right. And developing those relationships early is a good idea, because it really, there are a lot of things you ought to look about track record and knowledge and skills, but if you can't work together, it's not going to work. We love having those relationships over a period of time. Sometimes we work with people when they're thinking about making acquisitions, and that evolves. I stay friends with lots and lots of clients for years and years and years later, because you end up being so close. But one of the things, I mean, we do several things that can, we don't do a whole lot of hardcore consulting on how to improve your business, as I mentioned earlier. And the reason is we hope that people like Adam and the myriad of his competitors will send us clients. And I don't really want to be viewed as a competitor of theirs. Number one, I'm not very good at it. I've never owned a landscape company, although I'm going to pull that trigger and take the test. I've already paid the money to be a landscape industry certified manager.
Really?
I just haven't had enough time to take a day off for that recently. But I don't, I've never done it. I've been in lots and lots and lots of landscape companies, but I've never,
Will you use Adam to consult with?
I certainly would.
Better make sure of that.
But there are a lot of people that are very good at that sort of thing. And it's real similar to when I said you better find somebody you can get along with. You really need to find a consultant to work with who is somebody who you're on the same wavelength with, that you actually like them. And it's going to be a successful relationship. And so I encourage people to take the time to interview several people and find one that's a good fit for where they are and what they want to do, and just likes the same kind of things. It goes beyond the landscape part of it. But if you have to trust somebody, or you're going to second guess everything they tell you too. And so we encourage that. But anyway, we do have those kinds of long-term relationships with people. That's why one of the reasons why on our website we have that program I mentioned, the Value Builder System. There's another part of that we have that's called the Pre-Score, and it's another even simpler process, but it gets you thinking about, are you ready to exit your business? The Value Builder Score is a measure of, is your business ready to be sold? Or are there things you need to work on? The Pre-Score gives you a model to work through getting yourself ready to move on, which is a lot harder than it sounds at first. There's some surveys that have been done that show that a year after selling their business, a large percentage of business owners regret how it went. And they regret because they didn't really understand what they were doing. They let their life revolve around their business, which most business owners do. And then all of a sudden it's cut off and gone. And so they have to rediscover their spouse, for one. So it walks you through a process of, are you ready financially? Are you ready emotionally? What are you going to do next? How to think about those things. And those things are free tools on our website that hopefully some people do discover and play with way before they're ready to do a deal.
Ron, thank you so much for joining us on a Saturday morning. We really appreciate your time.
Immensely.
Great. And I feel like there's just so much more we could talk about that I think we're going to need to do this again sometime in the near future. So
I'd love to invite you on to Turfs Up Radio as well. There's so many questions that I have for you, and that I'd love to be able to cover about digging deeper into your business, finding out why, or you're talking about, having to like you, but how about, how do we find value, and, how can we manage a good partnership moving forward as well, and how that works. So I'm excited. I'd love to get you in on some of the other shows that we do with Turfs Up Radio, get involved with that. I'm sure Adam would love to have that too. But
I always enjoy this sort of thing, and so just let me know.
Okay, for sure. Wow, thank you.
Thank you so much, Ron. All right, everybody. Well, we're going to wrap it up today. I just want to remind all of our listeners here on the Green Executive and Turfs Up Radio and all around the country to download the Turfs Up Radio app. And we will see you all next time. And this is Adam Linneman closing out the Green Executive for Turfs Up Radio, reminding all of our friends to stay green and keep your hands dirty. Take care, everybody.